The morning of June 14th, 2147, started like any normal day on Earth. People woke up, ate breakfast, and went to work. Children walked to school with their friends. Mothers pushed bobbies in strollers through parks. Old men sat on benches and read newspapers. Nobody knew that by the end of the day, 7 billion of them would be dead. Admiral Cole was standing on the bridge of the orbital defense station called Sentinel. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had served in the military for 30 years, but nothing in her training had prepared her for what she was about to see. The first warning came at exactly 9:47 in the morning. A young officer named Tommy Grant looked at his screen and frowned. "Admiral, I'm seeing something strange. There's some kind of disturbance in space about 200,000 kilometers from Earth." Walked over to his station. "What kind of disturbance?" "I don't know, ma'am. It looks like space itself is bending." Tommy's voice was confused, not scared. He didn't understand yet. Then the disturbances. 1 became 10, 10 became 100, 100 became 1,000, and then the ships appeared. They came through rips in space like demons crawling out of hell. Massive vessels, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were black as night and covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. There were thousands of them, spreading across the sky above every major city on Earth. Blood turned to ice. "Sound the alarm, all stations to battle ready. Someone get me a line to Earth Command right now." But there was no time. The alien ships didn't send a message. They didn't ask for surrender. They didn't explain who they were or what they wanted. They simply opened fire. Beams of white-hot plasma shot down from the sky. Each beam was a kilometer wide and burned hotter than the surface of the sun. New York City was the first to die. One moment, 8 million people were going about their lives. The next moment, there was nothing but a smoking crater and ash floating on the wind. Watched in horror as the destruction spread. Beijing, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Paris, Los Angeles. One by one, the great cities of Earth vanished in fire. The screams came through every communication channel, millions of voices crying out in terror and pain, and then silence. "Admiral, what do we do?" Tommy was crying now, tears running down his young face. He was only 22 years old. Didn't have an answer. The Sentinel station had weapons, but they were designed to fight pirates and small threats. Against this fleet, they were less than insects. The alien ships ignored the orbital stations at first. They were focused on the planet below, burning everything they could find. The bombardment continued for hours. Stood at the window and watched her world die. She saw the continents change color as fire swept across them. She saw the oceans boil at the edges where the plasma beams hit the water. She saw the clouds turn black with ash and smoke. Down on Earth, people ran and screamed and died. Some tried to fight back. Military bases launched missiles and sent up fighter jets. None of it mattered. The alien ships swatted away human weapons like a man brushing away flies. General was in a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains when the attack began. He was 60 years old with white hair and a face like carved stone. He had fought in 3 wars, but he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we've lost contact with Washington," his aide said. "And New York, and Chicago, sir, we're losing contact with everyone." Looked at the screens showing satellite footage of Earth. He watched the death of his world in high definition. For a moment he felt despair so deep it almost crushed him. 7 billion people. His wife was in Denver. His son was in Seattle. His were in Houston. All gone, all dead. But was not a man who gave up. Even in the darkest moment, his mind was working. If even one human survived, there was hope, and he intended to make sure more than one survived. "All stations, this is General," he said into the emergency broadcast system. "Initiate Protocol Omega. I repeat, Protocol Omega. Get our people underground. Use the old mines, the subway tunnels, anywhere deep enough to survive. Do not try to fight. Do not try to run, hide, survive. That is an order." Across the planet, surviving military units heard the message and acted. They gathered civilians and led them to underground shelters. Old coal mines in Pennsylvania became refugee camps. The subway systems of surviving cities became homes for thousands. Natural cave systems in every country filled with frightened, desperate people. The bombardment continued for 3 days. The aliens were thorough. They didn't just destroy cities. They targeted farms, water treatment plants, power stations, and hospitals. They were trying to make the planet unlivable. They wanted to break humanity completely. On the third day, the firing stopped. The alien fleet pulled back, leaving behind only a small force of ships to watch the planet. A message was broadcast in every human language, translated by some unknown technology. This world is now property of the Empire. The native species has been. Remaining specimens will serve as labor units or be eliminated. Resistance is not possible. Compliance is mandatory. The message repeated every hour for a week. Then even that stopped. They didn't care enough about the surviving humans to keep talking to them. When the smoke cleared and the fires died down, roughly 1 billion humans remained alive. They crawled out of their hiding places and looked at a world they didn't recognize. The sky was gray with ash. The ground was black and burned. The air smelled like death. Cole was one of the survivors. Her station had been destroyed on the second day, but she had escaped in a shuttle and made it to the surface. She found General's bunker after 2 weeks of walking through the wasteland. When she arrived was already planning. Maps covered the walls. Lists of survivors were being compiled. Resources were being counted. "Admiral Cole," he said when he saw her. "Good, I need officers who can think. Sit down, we have work to do." Looked at the old general with red, tired eyes. "Work, sir. 7 billion people are dead. The aliens have ships that make ours look like toys. What work can we possibly do?" Looked at her with eyes that burned with cold fire. "We survive. We learn. We build. And then, Admiral, we make them pay for every single life they took. I don't care if it takes 100 years. I don't care if I die before I see it happen. Humanity will have its revenge." Felt something stir in her chest. It was anger, pure and hot and powerful. It pushed away the despair and the grief and left something hard in its place. "Yes, sir," she said. "Where do we start?" "We start by learning everything we can about these, and then we start building." Outside the bunker, the wind howled across the dead surface of Earth. But deep underground, in hidden places all over the planet, the survivors were already beginning to plan. The thought they had won. They thought humanity was broken. They had never been more wrong. 10 years passed after the massacre. 10 years of darkness, hunger, cold, and quiet anger. The survivors lived like rats beneath the ground. They built cities in old mines and caves. They grew food under artificial lights. They collected rainwater and filtered it through machines made from scraps. Life was hard, but humans are hard creatures. They did not break. Dr. Lisa Morgan sat in her laboratory deep beneath what used to be Pittsburgh. The old coal mines there had become a city of 50,000 people. They called it New Pittsburgh, though it looked nothing like the old city. It was a place of tunnels and chambers lit by dim electric lights. Lisa was 45 years old now. Before the invasion, she had been a professor of physics at a famous university. She had written papers about theoretical space travel and given lectures to bored students. Now she spent her days taking apart alien technology and trying to understand how it worked. "Look at this," she said to Brooks, her assistant, was a young man who had been an engineering student before the world ended. Now he was one of the best engineers humanity had left. Lisa pointed at the device on her table. It was a piece of a shuttle that had crashed in the mountains 2 years ago. Their engines don't use fuel like ours. They use something else, something I've never seen before. Leaned closer. "What is it?" "I think it's compressed dark matter. the same stuff that makes up most of the universe, but nobody ever figured out how to use it. Lisa's eyes were bright with excitement. If we can understand this, we can build ships that are faster than anything we ever dreamed of. This was how the humans spent the years of silence. They studied, they learned, they built. In a bunker under Kansas, General coordinated everything. He was 70 now, old and tired, but his mind was still sharp. His daughter had become his right hand. She was a captain in what remained of the military, a serious woman with her father's determination. "The Nevada cell reports success," told him one morning. She handed him a piece of paper with coded writing. They didn't use electronic messages because they might detect them. Everything was written by hand and carried by runners. Read the message slowly. "They've created a new metal alloy, strong enough to resist plasma weapons." "Yes, sir. They tested it against captured guns," the metal held. Allowed himself a small smile. It was the first time he had smiled in months. "That's the last piece we needed. Send word to all cells. We're moving to the next phase." The next phase was building a ship. Not a small shuttle or a simple transport, but a real warship, something that could fight and win. The construction site was a massive cavern under the Appalachian Mountains. 10,000 workers lived there, cutting rock, welding metal, and assembling pieces that were brought from factories all over the planet. It took 5 years to build. They called the ship Reckoning. Meanwhile, they paid little attention to Earth. Their commander was a creature named. He had purple skin, 4 arms, and a face full of sharp teeth. He thought of his posting on Earth as a punishment. The planet was a wasteland. The surviving humans seemed weak and pathetic. They came out of their holes sometimes to scavenge, but they never caused trouble. Spent most of his time requesting a transfer to somewhere more important. He reduced his patrols because they seemed pointless. He didn't notice the humans digging deeper underground. He didn't see the lights in the mountains at night. He thought humanity was dying slowly, and he was content to let them die. He was a fool. In New Pittsburgh, Lisa Morgan made breakthrough after breakthrough. She figured out how the faster-than-light engines worked. She learned to read their computer systems. She discovered that they had conquered hundreds of worlds, and that they believed no species could ever challenge them. "They're arrogant," she told Cole, who had become the military commander of the Eastern Resistance. "They've been winning for so long that they've forgotten how to be careful." Nodded. She was 60 now, but still strong. The years underground had made her tough as iron. "Good. Arrogant enemies make mistakes." The humans also made contact with other survivors around the world. In Russia, in China, in Brazil, in Australia, small groups had survived and were doing the same things: building, learning, waiting. They shared information through a network of messengers who traveled through tunnels and across the surface at night. It was slow and dangerous, but it worked. Slowly, the scattered survivors became a united force. The hardest part was keeping hope alive. Many people wanted to give up. They said they were too powerful, that humanity had no chance, that they should just accept their fate and live out their days in peace. General spoke to these people whenever he could. He was too old to travel much, so he recorded messages that were carried to every settlement. "I know you're tired," he said in one message. "I know you've lost people you loved. I lost my wife. I lost my son. I lost my. Every day I wake up and remember that they're gone, and for a moment I want to give up too." He paused and took a deep breath. "But then I remember something. I remember that they expect us to give up. They expect us to fade away and die. And I refuse to give them what they expect. Every day that we survive is a victory. Every child that is born underground is a promise that humanity will continue. And one day, I swear to you, we will rise from these tunnels and take back what is ours." The message spread from settlement to settlement. People listened and felt something stir in their hearts: hope, anger, determination. In the cavern under the Appalachian Mountains, the reckoning grew larger every day. Workers attached armor plates made from the new alloy. Engineers installed engines based on Lisa's designs. Weapons experts mounted guns that combined human and technology. Visited the construction site and stood in awe of what they had built. The ship was 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, sleek and deadly. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "When will it be ready?" she asked the lead engineer, a man named Danny Carter. Danny wiped sweat from his forehead. He had been working 20-hour days for months. 6 more months, maybe less if we push hard. "Push hard," said. "My father doesn't have much time left. I want him to see this ship fly." Danny nodded and went back to work. Everyone worked harder after that. They all wanted the old general to see his dream become real. On the surface, the patrols continued their lazy circles around the planet. Commander filed another transfer request and complained to his officers about being stuck on this boring, dead world. He had no idea that beneath his feet in the darkness, humanity was building a weapon that would shake the galaxy. He had no idea that the species he had dismissed as weak and broken was about to rise up and bring fire and death to his entire empire. The years of silence were almost over. The time for revenge was coming. 15 years after the massacre, on the exact anniversary of the day that came, the mountain exploded. Not with fire or destruction, but with light and thunder. The top of the mountain cracked open like an egg, and from inside rose the reckoning. The ship climbed into the sky on pillars of blue-white fire, its engines roaring louder than any sound Earth had heard in 15 years. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the clouds part around his ship. He was 42 years old, with a hard face and calm eyes. He had been a Navy pilot before the invasion. He had watched his entire squadron die in the first hour of the attack. For 15 years, he had trained and waited for this moment. "All systems are working perfectly," said Lieutenant Commander Amy. She was his second in command, a small woman with quick hands and a quicker mind. "The fleet is launching behind us." Daniel looked at the screens showing the view behind the reckoning. One by one, more ships were rising from hidden bases around the planet. 47 vessels in total. Destroyers, frigates, carriers, and support ships. It wasn't a large fleet by galactic standards, but it was everything humanity had, and it was enough. "Take us to orbit," Daniel ordered, "and find me the station." The orbital station was on the far side of the planet. Commander was sleeping when the alarm started screaming. He jumped out of bed and ran to the command center, his 4 arms fumbling with his uniform. "What's happening?" he demanded. His sensor officer, a young named, was staring at his screen with wide eyes. "Commander, there are ships, human ships, dozens of them." "That's impossible. The humans don't have ships. They don't have anything." "Sir, look for yourself." Looked at the screen and felt his blood turn cold. The human fleet was coming around the curve of the planet, and at its head was the biggest warship he had ever seen. It was covered in weapons and glowing with power, and it was coming straight for him. "Launch all fighters," screamed. "Call for reinforcements. Send a message to the Empire." But there was no time. The Reckoning's main cannon fired once. A beam of energy brighter than the sun crossed the distance between the two forces in less than a second. It hit the station dead center. The station didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive structure full of soldiers and equipment. The next moment there was nothing but scattered atoms and expanding gas. Died without ever understanding what had happened. He had been so sure that the humans were weak. He had been so confident that they could never challenge the... His last thought was confusion. The battle for Earth's orbit lasted 6 hours. They had 50 ships stationed in the system, plus hundreds of fighters. They fought hard, but they were facing an enemy they didn't understand. Human ships moved differently than ships. They were faster and more nimble. Their weapons hit harder, and their crews fought with a fury that they had never encountered. Every human pilot knew someone who had died in the massacre. Every human soldier had lost family and friends. They fought like they had nothing to lose because they didn't. Lieutenant Sarah Park flew a fighter in the battle. She was 28 years old and had been 13 when they came. She had watched her parents die from the window of a basement shelter. Now she was screaming with joy as she blew fighters out of the sky. "That's for my mother," she yelled as she destroyed one ship. "That's for my father," another ship exploded. "That's for everyone you murdered." By the time the battle ended, every vessel in the system had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost 8 ships and 200 crew members. It was a price they were willing to pay. General watched the battle from his bunker. He was 80 years old now, too weak to stand for long. His daughter sat beside him, holding his hand. "We did it, Father," she said softly. "We won." Smiled. It was a real smile, the first one in years. "No, my dear, we haven't won yet. This is just the beginning, but it's a good beginning." He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He didn't wake up again. General, the man who had kept humanity alive through the darkest years, died with a smile on his face. In orbit, Daniel Hayes received the news of the general's death. He bowed his head for a moment of silence. Then he looked up with hard eyes. "Open a channel," he said. "Broadcast on all frequencies. I want the Empire to hear this." Amy made the connection. Daniel stood straight and spoke clearly. "Attention, Empire. 15 years ago you came to our world without warning. You killed 7 billion of our people. Men, women, and children who had never done anything to you. You burned our cities and poisoned our land. You thought you had destroyed us." He paused and let the words sink in. "You were wrong. We survived. We learned. We built. And now we are coming for you, not for conquest, not for territory. We don't want your worlds or your resources. We want revenge. We are going to find every ship you have and destroy it. We are going to break every fleet you send against us. We are going to tear your empire apart piece by piece until there is nothing left." His voice grew colder. "This is not a declaration of war. This is a death sentence. You murdered our people and now you will pay the price. Run if you want. Hide if you can. It won't matter. We will find you. And when we do, you will understand what it means to face a species with nothing left to lose." The message ended. It was received at every outpost within 1,000 light years. It spread through the Empire like fire through dry grass. Commanders who had never heard of Earth suddenly learned about the small blue planet and what their empire had done to it. And for the first time in their long history of conquest, they felt fear, real fear, because they had created something they couldn't control. They had turned a peaceful species into an army of vengeance. In the ruins of what had been New York City, a memorial stood. It was a simple wall with the names of the dead carved into it. 7 billion names, too many to ever read completely. But people came there anyway, to remember and to promise. Now humans came to the memorial, with new words on their lips. "We're coming," they whispered to the names on the wall. "We're coming to make them pay." The war had begun. The war lasted 7 years. 7 years of blood, fire, and revenge. Commander floated in her fighter and looked at the destruction around her. The shipyard at Station had been the biggest military construction facility in this part of the galaxy. 300 warships had been built there every year. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and floating debris. "Strike Group 7, form up," she said into her communicator. "We're moving to the next target." Was 31 years old. She had been a child when they came, hiding in a basement with her grandmother while the world burned above them. Her grandmother had died of sickness 3 years later in the underground city, had joined the military as soon as she was old enough, and she had been fighting ever since. She had killed more than she could count, and she planned to kill many more. The human campaign was not like any war the galaxy had seen before. The expected direct battles, large fleets meeting in open space. That was how they had always fought. That was how every species they had conquered had fought. Humans didn't fight that way. Admiral Daniel Hayes studied them for months before launching his campaign. He learned their tactics, their supply lines, their weaknesses, and then he attacked those weaknesses with brutal efficiency. Human ships didn't meet fleets in open battle. They struck convoys carrying food and fuel. They ambushed patrol ships in asteroid fields. They appeared from nowhere, destroyed their targets, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. "They are used to being the hunters," Daniel explained to his officers. "We're going to teach them what it feels like to be prey." The High Command was confused at first. They sent a fleet of 500 ships to destroy the human forces. The fleet arrived at the last known human position and found nothing but empty space. While they searched, human ships attacked 3 colonies on the other side of their territory. They sent a bigger fleet, 1,000 ships this time. The humans led them on a chase through 5 star systems, always staying just ahead, never engaging directly. Meanwhile, human strike teams destroyed fuel depots and communication stations across a dozen worlds. Within 2 years, the supply network was in chaos. Ships couldn't get fuel. Soldiers couldn't get food. Messages took weeks to arrive instead of hours. The great war machine of the Empire began to break down. And then the rebellion started. They had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. Most of those worlds had given up hope of ever being free. Their people served the Empire because they had no choice. They believed resistance was impossible. Humanity proved them wrong. On a world called, a species of small, furry beings had been enslaved for 300 years. They worked in mines and factories, building ships and weapons for their masters. They had tried to rebel twice before and been crushed both times. But when they saw the human messages, when they learned that a species thought to be destroyed had risen up and was winning, something changed. Hope returned to their hearts. The rebellion began on a Tuesday. By Friday, every soldier on the planet was dead. The leader, a female named, sent a message to the human fleet. "We have seen what you have done. We want to join you. Tell us how we can help." Admiral Cole, now commanding a section of the human fleet, accepted the alliance, and she sent the same message to every enslaved world in the Empire. "You are not alone. Rise up, fight back. We will support you." Within a year, 40 worlds had rebelled. Within 2 years, it was 100. They found themselves fighting on dozens of fronts, their empire crumbling from inside and outside at the same time. In her laboratory aboard the Reckoning, Dr. Lisa Morgan worked day and night developing new weapons. She was 60 now, her hair completely gray, her eyes tired but still sharp. She had lost her husband and 3 children in the first attack. She had not smiled since. "The new warheads are ready," she told Admiral Daniel Hayes one morning. "Each one can collapse the power cores of every ship within 500 kilometers. One shot can destroy an entire fleet." Daniel looked at the specifications and felt a chill run down his spine. Lisa had created a weapon of terrible power, but he also knew they needed it. "How many can we build?" "As many as you need." The weapons were called. The first time they were used, at the Battle of Nexus Point, 1,500 ships were destroyed in a single flash of light. The commander had been so confident of victory. He had outnumbered the human fleet 20 to 1. He died without ever understanding what had hit him. Admiral Cole died at Nexus Point. Her ship was hit by a missile moments after they detonated. She was 75 years old. She had spent the last 22 years of her life fighting for revenge, and she had seen her people transform from scattered survivors into a force that could shake the galaxy. Daniel Hayes took command of the entire human fleet after her death. He honored her memory by pressing the attack harder than ever. They tried to negotiate. They sent messages offering peace, offering territory, offering anything the humans wanted. Daniel didn't even respond. There was nothing they could offer that would satisfy humanity's anger. This war would only end one way. By the seventh year, the empire had shrunk to a fraction of its former size. Most of their colonies were gone, either destroyed or freed. Their fleet had been reduced from hundreds of thousands of ships to less than 20,000. Their economy was shattered. Their people were starving. And still the humans came, relentless, unstoppable, driven by a rage that had been building for 22 years. The final target was Prime, the of the Empire, the planet where the decision to attack Earth had been made, the place where 7 billion death sentences had been signed. Daniel stood on the bridge of the reckoning and looked at the star charts. The path to Prime was clear. The last defenses were crumbling. "Set course for there," he ordered. "It's time to end this." Amy, now a full commander and still at his side after all these years, nodded and gave the order. The fleet turned as one and headed for the heart of enemy territory. The long hunt was almost over. The final reckoning was about to begin. 23 years after the massacre of Earth, the human fleet arrived at Prime. Admiral Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the reckoning and looked at the enemy through the main. It was a large planet, bigger than Earth, with purple oceans and green continents. 12 billion lived there. 12 billion lives that now hung by a thread. "Their defense fleet is moving to intercept," Commander Amy reported. She had been with Daniel since the beginning. Her hair was gray now, and her face was lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp and her hands were still steady. "How many ships?" Daniel asked. 10,000, sir. Everything they have left." Daniel nodded slowly. They had gathered every remaining vessel for the defense of there. It was the largest fleet they had ever assembled, desperate, final. Against them stood 600 human ships and 3,000 allied vessels from a dozen different species. Cruisers flew alongside human destroyers. Ships from 20 liberated worlds had come to see the end of the empire that had enslaved them. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes," Daniel said, his voice carried to every vessel in the fleet. "Today we end this war. Today we finish what we started. Remember why we're here. Remember who we lost. And show these monsters what happens when they attack humanity." The two fleets crashed together like waves in a storm. The battle was the bloodiest in galactic history. Ships exploded on both sides. Fighters twisted and danced between the larger vessels, firing and dying in the darkness of space. Lieutenant was in the thick of it, leading her squadron against a group of cruisers. She had been fighting for 7 years straight, and she was tired, but she refused to stop. Not now. Not when they were so close. "Stay on my wing," she told her pilots. "We punched through their screen and hit the carriers behind them." They punched through. The carriers burned. On the reckoning, damage reports flooded in. The great ship was taking hits from all directions, her armor holding but slowly weakening. Daniel ignored the reports and focused on the battle. They were winning, but slowly. "Admiral, we're detecting something," Amy said. "The flagship is moving toward us. I think their commander wants to face you directly." Daniel smiled grimly. "Good, let him come." The flagship was almost as big as the reckoning. It was old and battle-scarred, and it came at the human ship with all guns blazing. The two vessels exchanged fire at close range, each trying to destroy the other. A missile hit the reckoning's bridge. The explosion killed 6 officers and sent shrapnel flying everywhere. Daniel felt something hot cut across his face, but he didn't fall. "Return fire," he said calmly. "Everything we have." The reckoning's main cannon fired 3 times in quick succession. The first shot broke through the flagship's shields. The second shot cracked its hull. The third shot hit its power core. The flagship exploded in a ball of white fire. The death of their commander broke the spirit of the remaining forces. Within hours, the battle was over. The human fleet held orbit over Prime. Daniel sat in his command chair and looked at the planet below. His face was bleeding and he was exhausted, but he had won. Humanity had won. The Empire was finished. The communication officer turned to him. "Sir, the government is requesting to speak with you." "Open a channel." The face of it appeared on the screen. It was old and tired, with dull purple skin and clouded eyes. The supreme leader of the empire looked at Daniel Hayes and saw his own death. "Human commander," they said, "we surrender, we ask for mercy." Daniel was silent for a long moment. He thought about his home, about the world that had been burned. He thought about 7 billion people who had died screaming while the sky fell on them. He thought about his mother, his father, his sister, all dead on the first day. He had spent 23 years dreaming of this moment. 23 years imagining what he would do when he finally had the power to destroy the species that had murdered his people. "Supreme Leader," Daniel said slowly, 23 years ago, your empire came to my world without warning and killed 7 billion of my people. Men, women, and children who had never done you any harm. Today, I have the power to do the same to you. I could order my fleet to burn your world the way you burned mine. I could kill 12 billion of your people and leave nothing but ash." He paused, and every creature in both fleets held their breath. "I will not." On the bridge, several officers turned to look at him in surprise. The leader's eyes widened with disbelief. "Do not mistake this for mercy," Daniel continued. His voice was hard as iron. "This is not mercy. This is judgment. Your empire is finished. Your military is destroyed. Your colonies are freed. You will never again have the power to threaten another world. But I will not become what you were. I will not murder billions of innocent people because of what their leaders did." He leaned forward, and his eyes burned with cold fire. "Humanity came to the stars because you forced us to. We became warriors because you gave us no choice. But we are not monsters. We are better than you ever were. That is why we win, and that is why you lose. Not because we are stronger, but because we are better." The Supreme Leader bowed his head. "What will happen to us? Your war leaders will face trial for their crimes. Your people will live in peace. You will rebuild, and you will remember what you did to us. And you will never, ever forget that we could have destroyed you and chose not to." The transmission ended. The war was over. 6 months later, Daniel Hayes returned to Earth for the first time in many years. The planet was still healing. The scars of the bombardment would take generations to fully disappear, but cities were being rebuilt. Children were playing in parks. Life was returning. He stood at the memorial in what had once been New York City. The wall with 7 billion names stretched as far as he could see in every direction. He added his own name to the list of visitors, one of millions who came every year to remember. "We won," he said quietly to the names on the wall. "We beat them, but we didn't become them. We stayed human." He stood there for a long time, thinking about everyone he had lost, his family, his friends, his who had died in the long war. So many people gone, so many empty spaces that would never be filled. But humanity had survived, more than survived. They had taken their place among the stars. They had freed 100 worlds from slavery. They had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of. Behind Daniel, the sun was setting over the Atlantic Ocean. Above him, the lights of human starships twinkled among the stars. Ships that protected Earth. Ships that explored the galaxy. Ships that would never let there be caught defenseless again. A little girl walked up to the memorial with her mother. She looked at the wall with wide eyes. "Mommy, why are there so many names?" Her mother knelt beside her. "These are people who died a long time ago, sweetheart. Bad people hurt them. But we stopped the bad people." "Yes, baby, we stopped them, and we made sure they could never hurt anyone again." The little girl nodded seriously. Then she looked up at the stars. "Are there good people up there too?" Her mother smiled. "Yes, many of them, and some of them are humans keeping everyone safe." Daniel watched them walk away. He felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the quiet hope of a better future. Humanity had been through hell. They had lost everything and found a way to fight back. They had faced the worst the galaxy could throw at them and refused to break. And now, finally, they could start to heal. The war was over, the future was beginning. And humanity would face it together.